I mean, to which degree does Netanyahu represent the Israeli people? Is a real question.
To which point does Trump or Biden represent the American people?
And to which degree does Hamas represent the Palestinian people?
Does none of these represent it, but who have the power in order to make the decisions? It really comes down to that.
Well, who does have the power? You're giving a lot of power to Israel.
Yeah.
But the Arab League...
What should Hamas do? What do you think we should Hamas do?
In today's video, Bassem Youssef absolutely destroys Lex Fridman in a heated debate about Gaza on the Lex Fridman podcast. What starts off as a calm philosophical discussion quickly escalates as Bassem Youssef refuses to let vague moral platitudes slide. While Lex Fridman tries to navigate a neutral tone, Bassem Youssef brings undeniable receipts, historical context, UN reports, and first-hand knowledge, all to highlight the systemic injustice Palestinians face. So let's dive in and watch how Bassem Youssef shuts down Lex Fridman in this heated debate on the Lex Fridman podcast.
Continue doing what a charter says, which is trying to destroy Israel. And the role of the Palestinian people is to overthrow Hamas and get a more moderate leadership, probably. And the role of the Israeli people is to vote out this right-wing government and elect a more moderate leader so that there's a chance at peace with two moderate leaders.
So before Hamas even got to control 2006 Gaza, there was Ariel Sharon in 2000. And we all know what happened. And Ariel Sharon kind of like came up with this amazing policy of like breaking people's kids' bones in the Intifada. So Hil Baraki was also like, I mean, which one is moderate? I mean, the thing is, Hamas is a product of what happened. I mean, we can, if there was no apartheid in South Africa, there would be no NFC. There would be no Nelson Mandela. If there were no Nazis in Paris, there would be no French resistance. And I'm not saying that, and again, I'm not, don't want to be put in a position to defend Hamas or anybody, because you know what that entails. But those are like Hamas, again, not defending them. They went into October 7th. What was their, why did they did that? Like release our hostages, the people in prison. Because if you're talking about people who were kidnapped, Israel kidnaps people every single day. And when they had the first exchange on November 4th, Israel released 400 people, 3/4 of them were women and children. Why are those people in prison? There's 1 in 4 kids that are imprisoned that stay in solitary confinement, which is by international law a form of torture. And you're putting kids through that.
Is it possible? So first of all, ceasefire.
Yes.
And longer term, is it possible for Arab states and the United States to get together and with power through diplomacy enforce a solution?
It's a very, very ideal solution, but you know, and I know, that the Arab states don't really have the power. All of the powers are in the hands of America.
I think they have the power. See, I think they have the power. I don't.
Maybe they don't want to use it.
They don't want. Well, that's
maybe they
because there's a benefit. Like
there's a benefit.
The dark sense I have is that a lot of people win from the suffering that Palestinians are going through because they can point to that and distract from
definitely
corruption in their own states. And then obviously Iran can benefit also from the same kind of dynamic, distracting from the authoritarian nature of their regime.
Definitely, but what is the core of the problem here? Is it the Arab states using the suffering, or the suffering itself? And the suffering comes from people being displaced, their homes were taken away. There are 7 million Palestinians in diaspora. 7 million. 7 million went out there, and now they're living in Canada and America and Europe. They had homes there they cannot go back to. 1.7 million people of the people in Gaza don't belong in Gaza. They were pushed from other places.
Bassem Youssef cut through the vague both-sidism with clarity and lived truth. When Lex Fridman asked what should Hamas do, or suggested the Arab League has enough power to resolve this, Bassem Youssef reminded him of the actual dynamics at play. Israel is the occupying force, backed by the most powerful country on earth, and holds overwhelming military, political, and economic control. That's not a symmetrical situation, that's a power imbalance. Bassem Youssef also brought up something often ignored: Israel's routine detainment of Palestinians, including minors. According to Defense for Children International Palestine, hundreds of Palestinian children are arrested and held in Israeli military detention every year, many subjected to solitary confinement, an internationally recognized form of torture. In the recent hostage exchange, most of the Palestinians released by Israel were not convicted terrorists, but women and children who had been detained under administrative orders. That's not justice, that's systemic punishment. And when Lex Fridman floated the idea of a ceasefire or a regional solution led by Arab states, Bassem Youssef nailed the bitter truth. Most Arab governments don't want to challenge the status quo because the suffering of Palestinians can be used to deflect from their own corruption and authoritarianism. The real power to end the occupation lies with the US and Israel, not with powerless neighbors watching from the sidelines. Above all, Bassem Youssef's most powerful point was historical. Gaza is not filled with people who simply chose to live there.
The piecemeal thing of people are being, in Germany, I'm going to shift gear a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of fun. There's a book that I bought the rights to, and I want to turn it into a movie. Mm-hmm. And I optioned the right for 2 months, for 2 years in March of last year, before October 7th. After mm-hmm. October 7th, I bought the permanent right. Mm-hmm. That book is called The Muslim and the Jew. And it is written by an author called Ronen Steinke. I read an article about this book in 2016, and I chased that book for rights for 7 years. I didn't have that much money, but I wanted that book. And that book was translated into English called Anna and Dr. Helmi. And that book tells the incredible story under Nazi Germany, where Arabs went in droves to Berlin in the 1920s after the First World War in the Weimar Republic. And they became doctors and engineers and journalists for 2 reasons. Number one, it was dirt cheap, very cheap because of the inflation. And 2, a lot of the Arab nationalists didn't want to send their kids to England or France because they were the occupiers. And Dr. Helmi was the hero of that. He's an Egyptian doctor. And that's why I personally kind of connected with him. And he went to school, medical school, didn't find a place to live, so he lived in the Jewish ghetto, like many Arabs. He didn't find a school to work at, a hospital to work in, so he worked in a Jewish hospital. So there was a lot of Arabs who lived with the ghetto. And actually the first director of the Berlin mosque was a Jewish convert who converted to Islam, and he was a gay activist. I'm telling you, this is like a crazy story.
Yeah.
And this is not a fiction story. This is actually like a non-fiction. It's written actually based on the statement, the documents of the Nazis and the Gestapo. Dr. Helmi, he was in this hospital, and the Nazis came in and they killed and tortured and beat up the Jewish doctor, and they made him the head of his department. Then now he is surrounded by Nazi doctors. They didn't touch him because he was an Arab. There was kind of like a thing between Germany and the Arabs because they wanted to appease to them in order to have kind of a grassroots base in the Arab world where he wanted to go next.
Bassem Youssef introduced this remarkable true story about Dr. Mohammed Helmi, an Egyptian doctor in Berlin during the Nazi era, who risked his life to save Jews from the Holocaust. That story isn't just a compelling narrative, it shatters the lazy assumption that Arabs and Jews are inherently enemies, or that the conflict we see today is something ancient and unresolvable. Bassem Youssef's point was powerful. Shared resistance against oppression has existed between Arabs and Jews before, and the idea that supporting Palestinian rights equals anti-Semitism is a false political convenient narrative. And while Lex pivoted away from this emotional and historical debt, Bassem Youssef stayed grounded. He reminded us that Israel's actions in Gaza today Mass displacement, indiscriminate bombings, and collective punishment are not isolated responses to terror, but part of a long pattern of colonial policy and structural violence. And that matters because, as Bassem Youssef emphasized, people in Gaza aren't just living there. The vast majority are refugees, descendants of those expelled in 1948. Let's also talk about the context that Bassem Youssef touched on indirectly. As of 2023, over 60% of Gaza's population are children, many of whom have lived through 5 wars in under 15 years. According to UNICEF, over 90% of children in Gaza are in need of mental health support due to trauma. These aren't footnotes. They are the reality behind the headlines Lex Fridman seemed hesitant to challenge directly.
And this is why 1934, 1935, the racial laws of Nuremberg, they had a name change. First, they were called anti-Semitic. Then they changed into anti-Jewish because also Arabs were Semitic. So they wanted to appease the Arabs. Now, what happened to Dr. Helmi when that happened to him? He would go back to the ghetto and he would see the apartments next to him, the Jewish apartment, become more and more and more flooded with people because they were moving Jews and pushing them and putting them together, pushing them to the side. And each apartment, instead of one family, it would have 3, 4, 6, 7 families. And he was there when at home, and he was there. This is where the people he grew up with, he lived with, and now he's seeing that kind of discrimination just because he's an Arab. And then he started to kind of like atone for, like, because he felt responsible because he wasn't treated the same way, and he started to go and treat Jewish people in their homes because they couldn't go to hospitals. And then one family gave them his daughter. It's like, this is Anna, save her. He took her, pretended that she is his niece, put a hijab around her, taught her Arabic, called her Nadia, my daughter's name, by the way. And And he hid her in plain sight for 7 years in front of the Nazis as his nurse. It's an incredible story. And then not just that, he went to prison, and then he went out and he formed with the Arab people that was in prison with him a network that saves 300 Jews. You see that kind of story? This is the Jews that were living in the Arab world. I'm not saying that the Jews living in the Arab world was living like an incredible life. Of course, as like kind of a minority, they did not have like the full power of their full, advantages of the rule. That's normal. But we had this kind of a relationship before Israel was erected in 1948. And then, of course, everybody looked at Jews at the time as fifth column. And of course, the nationalistic regimes used that. And this is why what Biden said was very dangerous when he said, if there's no Israel, no Jew in the world will feel safe. You are the leader of the free world. You are the president of the United States. Do you mean that you're telling me that the Jews in your country, in the United States of America, are not safe? That is wrong on 2 levels. Number one, America historically and right now is more safe to Jews in America, in the world more than anybody. They are safer than the Jews in Israel. They never had pogroms or the Holocaust like Europe. They live here a good life, not perfect life, but they are better. Second of all, if you are the president and you're telling that a group of people will not feel safe unless there is a different one, you are already feeding into their fifth column. They're like, you're Russian, you come from there. And there is a group of laws in the Russian constitution that says that Russia will protect its citizens everywhere in the world. What happens if the president says like, oh, you're Russians, you're protected by your own country, you don't belong here? This is terrible.
Yeah, you're right. That's actually an indirect threat. It's like,
yes.
Even saying Muslims cannot feel safe in America or something like this. That means like that's a threat.
But what would a Jewish person in Beverly Hills or in Brooklyn feel if he hears that? You are already telling people you need to be loyal to Israel.
The story Bassem Youssef told about Dr. Mohammed, an Egyptian doctor in Nazi Germany who risked his life to hide Jewish families, is exactly the kind of historical truth that complies the false narrative of eternal Arab-Jewish hostility. Bassem Youssef didn't bring this up to score moral points. He used this to show that solidarity existed, that identity doesn't automatically mean division, and that Palestinians and Arabs have a long, nuanced history with Jewish communities. That story directly challenges the us versus them mindset that props up modern justifications for occupation and apartheid. And then Bassem made a stunning point. Biden saying that if there were no Israel, no Jew would feel safe. It's not just wrong, it's dangerous. What does that say to the millions of Jews around the world who doesn't live in Israel? Are they only safe because Israel exists? That logic echoes the same dangerous nationalism that other authoritarian regimes have used to justify invasions under the guise of protecting their people abroad. Bassem flipped the argument and exposed how it undermines both Jewish safety and belonging in places like the US. Lex didn't really engage with that. He nodded, he hedged, but he didn't push back on the actual structures of violence or power that Bassem laid out. Because let's be honest, saying both sides need better leaders is a way of deflecting from who's actually dropping the bombs, controlling the borders, and writing the laws. Bassem's commentary wasn't abstract. It was about power, history, and responsibility. And in a moment where so many are trying to sanitize or flatten the conversation, he cut through the moral clarity.
Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.